Hello, all, and welcome to the Anonymous Bitcoin Club. I am Post Capone, and thank you guys for having me. I've been invited to come and talk a little bit about ordinals, where things are, where they came from, where they're going, and maybe some other topics about Bitcoin in general. And we've got Al Business, Grog, Macintoshi, and Bitcoin Jake in here with us. Why don't you guys say hello?
Hello, hello. I am just the
Hey.
developer, the inscriptionist, and Macintoshi is the artist.
Hey guys.
What talk to me
Hey,
about the
everyone.
art, Macintoshi. What do you guys have going on?
I'll let Macintoshi lead it.
All right. Wow. I mean, it's only been, I think, a month and a half, and I feel like we've accomplished quite a bit. Essentially, just kind of a little run through on how we got started. It kind of started off getting rugged. I saw ordinals, and I felt like my project or this project should be launched on ordinals. So I started reaching out for developers in the ordinals wallet Discord. I was approached by someone who called himself a developer. He assured me that he was capable of doing this. He was very active in the chats. So I trusted him, sent him 250 pieces of our collection and 0.0458 Bitcoin, which was like about $1,000, a little over $1,000 at the time. And essentially, he inscribed one image and just claimed that the other, each 10,000 sats was an ordinal, which it wasn't. Jake was actually my first, interested buyer, so that's kind of how we figured out that this guy was scamming, and we're pretty much led up to here. So um, from then, we got together. Jake put his funds up. He, loves the art. He believes in the project because our goal was to be essentially like an educational foundation, and just teach people, about Bitcoin and ordinals and, security, OPSEC, privacy, practices and stuff like that. So we just wanted to be able to connect people with those resources. Um, we have a long list of things that we feel like are really strong accomplishments. As of right now, we have 100 of our collection inscribed. We've sold 30, I think 33 at this point. Um, and we're just kind of inscribing as we go. So we're connecting with other communities at this point. We're trying to develop some stronger relationships and partnerships with like the Rare Satoshi Society. They're avid sat hunters, and also with ordinal miners. They have a pretty large pretty strong group of miners or people who did mine in the past. So that's kind of like where we're at right now. We're just trying to get more eyes on our project, be listed on, you know, different marketplaces and stuff. So we're just kind of grinding things out. So definitely appreciate having you here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. So, Jake, how have things gone thus far in moving, the development side of the collection forward? Where are you guys at? What are you looking forward to?
It's been good. We like he said, we inscribed 10% of the collection under 500,000 inscription numbers. With our first one, our number one, being under 100,000. And we are using Satoshis that are from a stack that are 2017 and before. So some of the sats we even found some sats that are like 2009 that we're going to use for certain inscriptions. I know that like they're not that rare, but I mean, it's still pretty cool to me. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of the thing there with our sats is 2017 and before. We also commissioned a Bitcoin song already too, which was pretty cool from Hash Brown from Team Hodl. I don't know if you've ever heard the Lambo Land song.
I have not heard the Lambo Land song yet. I did hear. Well, maybe I did. Ha- Macintoshi shared one with me. It kind of looked like maybe it was filmed in like streets of San Francisco or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with the Lambo guy with dreads, that's Hash
yeah,
Brown.
yeah. That was a pretty fire track, actually. Um,
Yeah.
so cool. You brought it up yourself, right? Like, the what ordinals you're using and what you inscribe on. Like, it's all sort of like creating our own metas and our own games. And if we think the game is cool, then the game is cool, right? And really, that's all value in the marketplace, right? It's all subjective, and it's all just what we're interested in and what we think is cool. I'm excited to hear that the sat hunting game is getting like more popular. It was one of those carrots that we all tried to like dangle on the stick early on, but everybody was just so obsessed with like the sub 10K, sub 100K, all that. And we knew like the Ordinals team knew that the sat hunting game would emerge eventually. Unfortunately, like it's breaking out at a pretty rapid pace right now. There's so many different games you can play in that. I've seen, collections that inscribed everything just to sats that end in the number 42069, just for the memes, you can do sats from 2009, sats from blocks that were mined by particular people, sats from like famous transactions. Like I think most people are probably familiar with the pizza transaction where somebody, bought a pizza for 150,000 Bitcoin. So people are finding sats from the pizza transactions and using those to inscribe on, which, 150,000 Bitcoin, that's a lot of damn Bitcoin, like there's a lot of those sats. It's not so much hard to find them. It's just fun when you
Pretty.
do, right?
I thought it was 10,000 Bitcoin per pizza. I
Uh,
thought he got two
Maybe it
pizzas.
was. I might have that number wrong, actually. You might
Yeah,
be
no,
right.
you're all good. I'm kind of like a Bitcoin historian myself, so like when things like that come up, I just like to kind of correct them. But yeah, Laszlo, we have a couple art pieces actually that are dedicated to Laszlo.
Yes, you are correct. It was 10,000. I am wrong. But that's a lot of sats. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of those floating around. So what, dedicated to Laszlo? Talk me through that.
Macintoshi, that's on you. You're the artist.
Sorry, I have this stupid push to talk on here, so I'm talking, but nothing's coming out. Yeah, so one of the traits that I really wanted to, capture was, the Laszlo pizza, you know, debacle, and so essentially it's like a pizza delivery driver's like outfit and uniform. He has the hat, it says Laszlo's Pizza on it. His uniform is like matching, has Laszlo's on it. And then I even went a step further and made one of our anonymous masks look like it was a pizza melting. The melted cheese was coming off of it. Eyes are pepperonis. So it was just something fun like that. And there's several different attributes within the collection that do like reflect on historical events. Like we have like the Silk Road background, and I made like the like an old school like inmate outfit, and it has like 0109 on it, and that's supposed to be the Genesis block, like just like little things like that I hope more people begin to notice. But yeah, so the Laszlo's Pizza, we got it.
That's awesome. I love the sort of like Silk Road iconography, or like maybe the underlying culture is like starting to reemerge. I was talking to somebody, I can't say too terribly much about it quite yet, but I was talking to somebody the other day about some plans that they have to build out like better infrastructure for scaling and coordinating transactions, some specific to inscription, some specific to like privacy reinforcing tools. And the branding that they're using is like really heavily evocative of Silk Road. It's not, it's not a drug market or anything like that, but the branding sort of like harkens back to that, and I just thought it was so cool. And I love that Bitcoin's kind of like making its way back to its roots a little bit with all that.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's fun. Like this kind of developed after we started talking about like where we're gonna go with this project. We want to be like a, educational, resource for people. But then also we thought, well, maybe we can do like a Bitcoin historian kind of guild, where we can just get people who are passionate about, the events that happened, in the past, and who want to, if they want to start laying out from beginning to, to today, they can pretty much map out everything that's happened, So there's like an active, active ledger, of events. So we kind of stumbled upon that. It was like, hey, that'd be cool. Let's add this role. Let's try to get more passionate people in here. But I think just right now, at the moment, the sentiment of Ordinals is it's the hottest thing out right now. Everyone's looking for a quick flip, or the quick mint, and I don't think that a lot of people are there yet. They're not looking for the deeper story or deeper history of things.
Well, if you think about it, or like the whole inscriptions game is kind of staged to be history taking in real time, right? Like we've had this conversation in some other venues where like inscriptions is very like so like let's rewind to the point where like all the Bitcoin maxis, all the laser eye guys were like butthurt that we were, you know, inscribing JPEGs on a Bitcoin or whatever. And they were all ranting and raving about it. Inscriptions really like offers this thing where like Bitcoin can disrupt the whole like history is written by the victors kind of dilemma, right? Like we're writing history in real time, and like right now the history is definitely a party, right? Like we're all, you know, like you said, it's a lot of people that are just like getting stuff on the chain, looking for quick flips. You know, it's sort of a speculator's wet dream right now. But I really do think that in the long haul, there's going to be a lot of like whether it's inscribing like hard media, WikiLeaks, news releases that deserve to be known, you know, moving forward, or even going so far as to like inscribe. Maybe you inscribe like certain dependency packages for like software tooling. Like maybe you come up with software tooling that helps preserve people's privacy, or you know, gives them what they need to like bootstrap into some sort of like other distributed meta protocol. You can inscribe these as like applications into a file on Bitcoin and make sure that like those programs are immutably available for eternity. And so I think the whole historian concept is just very in meta for the inscriptions thing.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I didn't even think that far ahead on, you know, the, you know, possibilities of building that kind of stuff on, you know, ordinals or within ordinals. So definitely something that I'm interested in now because I'm also reaching out to, you know, more speakers, trying to expand, you know, obviously like on OPSEC and privacy. I was, you know, an early adopter of, you know, some privacy coins, you know, some years ago, and I'm reaching out to those guys because they're pretty deep in the privacy sector. So I think it'd be cool to, you know, touch on that. But definitely love your point on that. And I'm gonna leave most of that to Jake because I like to doodle and he's the he's the tech guy.
Yeah, we've got a very bright future in front of us for privacy tooling. There have been a couple of different individuals, and I don't want to leak specifics of like projects that people are working on, but like I could say like very confidently that, you know, on a 2-year time horizon, you could very easily see like the idea of tracing transactions on Bitcoin just completely erode and collapse. The way that we can leverage Taproot in particular, and some of the anonymity sort of enhancements that can come with like for example, Taproot allows us to do multi-sig transactions that appear as though they are a single signature, and like that one thing alone opens up like a huge realm. I mean, one, transactions become more cost efficient, so you can do like more sophisticated transactions for cheaper because you're not really requiring as much space because the signatures can be compressed and consolidated. But two, you can have multi-party coordinated transactions where nobody really knows that it was a multi-party coordinated transaction, and so you can almost approach, you know, a degree of anonymity that is very similar to like zk snarks or ring signatures with like zcash or monero type things. And it would be like selective participation. Some people will take advantage of it and some people won't, right? But it's going to be a very bright future for that. I feel confident.
Yeah, that's definitely 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 interesting and something to look into more. I guess one of my questions would be, um, since I think majority of us don't run our own node, what wallet would you recommend that the average or, you know, intermediate user should use? And if there's any privacy features on there, just kind of like the functionality of it, if I'm
Yeah,
asking that correctly.
sure. So I think like Electrum and Sparrow are both like really good, very approachable, like easy-ish to use. Like, you have to have a little bit of familiarity with just like how the UTXO model works at large. But like one day of homework and you could get like super comfortable using them, right? There will be like a huge action space moving forward for like better tooling in wallets, especially like inscription specific tooling. There's all these like things that, like, if you, let's say you're using Sparrow to manage a collection of inscriptions, right? Like there's all these things that you have to like think about as you're doing transactions, and all of them can be automated, like it can just be tooled into the software. And so we're starting to see like Hero is a really good one, Unisat is a really good one. um, More inscription specific tools come out now. There's an interesting thing where you can take two sort of development tracks when you do inscription specific tooling. You can either really adopt the idea of like never reusing an address, or you can consolidate everything down to a single address. And consolidating everything down to a single address does actually turn out to simplify the tool chain a little bit for the wallet. So developers are currently, like that's kind of the target, is like simple tool chain, make things as easy to iterate on and improve, right? But I do feel confident that more privacy optionality in inscription specific wallets will emerge. And I also feel really confident that we'll see something along the lines of like a fork of Sparrow wallet that has all the inscription stuff built into it, or a fork of Electrum with all the same stuff built into it, things like that. And those will provide robust coin control features which support anonymity and privacy, as well as making it very simple to manage ordinals products.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's obviously I don't run my own node. Jake does. He does all the inscriptions for our collection. So I'm just kind of on the sideline playing around with Sparrow a little bit. Haven't really sent anything out of it just because of the fear of making a mistake and losing some ordinals I have in there. So I'm just kind of just waiting on the sideline a little bit, just so I can have more time to really look into it. But I guess,
and taking
yeah.
your time with it is like, that's the right approach. Like, take your time with it and understand the tools that you're using. That'll pay dividends in the long run. And it'll give you a lot better understanding of just like how Bitcoin works, right? Like by interacting with those interfaces, by using those UTXO like selective spins and constructing transactions yourself, you can kind of speed run like a more intimate understanding of Bitcoin. You noted not running a node. One of the very nice things about Sparrow is that you can select to use like a public node, or you can use like a trusted node, like your own node, or maybe one of your friends' nodes. And so I actually think that there's like a lot of opportunity moving forward for there to be sort of like communities. Like, if we think about it, communities in NFT and NFT like products are kind of like built in, right? Like you make a thousand or 10,000 or whatever of like a collection, and then the owners of that collection kind of form a community. Well, it would be I think it would be like sort of a bright future if you had like each community had, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, node operators in it. And those node operators acted as the data provisioners as well as the relays for their community. And you want to, like, if you're concerned with privacy, for example, you want to make sure that you're using if you're using someone else's node, you want to make sure that it's somebody who is going to actively protect your privacy, because technically speaking, whatever node you're submitting the transactions to, no matter what you do with coin control, that node knows pretty much all your history, because it can see your device is the one sending it the transaction regardless of where the address is from, right? But once you hit that node and it starts populating into the network, the other relays in the network they can't tell much other than that it came from that node. So you can sort of form like kind of trustful communities to a certain extent. Like, I say, oh well, I'm going to use Bitcoin Jake's node, and like I'm confident that Bitcoin Jake isn't going to dox all my transaction history, right? So like my privacy is like, it's better than it would be if I was using Blockstream's node, right? It may not be as good as it is with my own node, but it's better than if I was using
Right.
Adam Back's node.
I am totally willing to run a public Ordinal Explorer also. That's actually something me and Mac Toshi were talking about before. I do need to, I think, maybe touch base with one of the developers or something, because I don't think I indexed this other node right. I have a SAT index, but then my other SAT index is not correct.
Yeah,
So I don't know what
we
happened.
had those reorgs that happened. Like we basically got like 3 reorgs sort of back to back, and they screwed up a lot of indexes. If you'd like some help with that, like hit me up. Let's chat out of bounds on that, and I'll help you get like a routine set up on the infrastructure to where, like, let's say a reorg happens again tomorrow, right? You can have sort of continuous backup procedures where like you're constantly updating a known good checkpoint, and then if you hit a reorg, you just roll back to that checkpoint, right? And then you can reindex a couple hundred blocks or whatever you need to get caught up, and things will go pretty smoothly. These are all routines that we had to learn too. You know, like we kind of overestimated ourselves, and like we didn't set up those routines for ordinals.com, and so there were some bumpy rides for us as well. As a broad statement, though, people running, so creators, developers, communities, all taking advantage of the incentives to run their own infrastructure, like having your own ordinals explorers, having your own marketplaces, having your own collection specific toolings of like what people can do with their products and things like that. Those are all like really good ways to actually approach like commercial opportunities, like potentially revenue generating infrastructure, which is like so fascinating to me personally, because typically speaking, like historically, being a node operator for Bitcoin either meant you just like were really serious about your own privacy and your own ability to validate the chain, or it meant that you were just like altruistically, helping it out. You just wanted to be a node operator so that we had more node operators, right? And now we've got this surface where like it's pretty reasonable to anticipate there being a lot of like revenue generating opportunities for node operators. And I'll throw out there, this is like one of the things that I'm
I've
spending a
been
lot of time working
considering
on.
mining, Jim. I'm
Say it
just
again.
saying the revenue for miners too has been going up. Ordinal's been
Oh,
great
through the
for
roof.
miners. Like I've
Yeah.
even been considering turning my S9 back on. Like
Yeah, I think like we're supposed to see it's like a 6 or 6.5% difficulty increase on the next difficulty bump. Is it or we did just see a 7.5%, and we are currently anticipating 11.5% difficulty adjustment in 2 weeks, which is awesome. I mean, that means that miners are onboarding left and right. Like that's all very good news. And it is the fee rates like right now. Looking 6 blocks out, the average is 14 sats per vbyte. Like the mempool is up to 1 gigabyte right now. We're purging transactions that are under 4.2 sats. Like the fee market is healthy as hell right now, which is great. So one of the product categories that I'm really focused on right now, and I'm collaborating with a few other people on this, is to get like sort of ready-made open source tooling available, to where like navigating the process of setting up your own, not just a clone of ordinals.com, but like meaningfully your own explorer and like meaningfully your own marketplaces and things like that will be very easy for creators. And so creators that choose to go the route of becoming node operators, joining the infrastructure of the network, they'll have, like I said, those opportunities. Like you can build a marketplace, and maybe the marketplace has some like nominal platform fees, or maybe you do like subscription services for users with like premium features, launch pads, creator tools, those kinds of things. So I think this is going to be a really exciting 2 years, man. I'm looking forward to it a lot.
It's so crazy to hear you say, exciting 2 years, because I think a week feels like a year, and just time's just flying by so fast, and it's hard to try to keep up with everything, and what's the next big thing, and everything else. I guess one of the other questions I have, which I had an issue with, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, was using a marketplace wallet like OrdSwap. So essentially, I bought ordinals, had had them sent there or, inscribed there. And trying to send them out, I didn't have enough Cardinal UTXOs when trying to fund it with, Bitcoin to be able to send it out. It was the wrong type of Bitcoin. So this stuff is, I think, kind of going to be like a wall for like the newer, person to adopt. Do you mind giving a little bit of insight on what Cardinal UTXOs are, even what UTXOs are, just kind of like just little basic stuff?
Sure, yeah. So I'll say in advance of all of this that in if I had to guess 3 to 6 months, most people will like wind up never really thinking about the whole Cardinal UTXO versus ordinal thing. Like the tooling will just be there to kind of like abstract away a lot of that stuff to where people don't think about it. But I think that this time period right here, where like you kind of have to learn it to be able to like make moves in the ecosystem, is good because it seeds the community with like sort of a core group of early adopters who have a good understanding of it, and those can like sort of they can be helpful voices as you get into the age where like nobody actually knows what the fuck's going on under the hood, and like everybody, sometimes people run into weird scenarios, they don't know what the fuck's going on. Having like a guy in the room that's like, oh yeah, that's because of this thing, and we had to learn that like back before we had all this wallet software, like that's a good thing. That's all like a really healthy process for any market in the ecosystem, right? So a Cardinal UTXO is essentially a UTXO that has not been used for any like ordinal related products. So it hasn't been labeled in some way as special, right? A file hasn't been inscribed to it, or we haven't demarcated that SAT as being like a special ordinal SAT, right? And those cardinal UTXOs are what we can use sort of like in whatever form we want, right? Like we can stack them into transactions in whatever order we want. We can use them to pay fees. We can use them to add padding back to inscription outputs. They're flexible. Those are like the most flexible thing. And then ordinal outputs are ones that, like we've said this SAT is special for some reason. Like we inscribed a file to it, or we said that it was like, one of the SATs from Satoshi's first spend on Bitcoin, or like whatever the reason is, right? Like we've demarcated it as special. And those outputs have to have very particular controls built in how they're used so that you don't misspend those SATs. But at the end of the day, underneath, sort of, down low at the protocol level on the Bitcoin L1, it's all just SATs. There's no difference from one to the other, right? So what you want is, now today, in order to remove foot guns, like you were talking about, like you haven't spent anything from Sparrow because like want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what's going on. You totally can. Like you can accidentally spend it the wrong way out of Sparrow if you don't have an understanding of what you're doing. And that's like a big reason why we communicate as thoroughly as we can. Like, hey, like Sparrow's a good tool, but like be careful and like take your time and understand what you're doing before taking any action. But like I said,
Right.
the wallet tooling will mature, and it already is maturing really rapidly. Like if you compare Hero and Unisat today versus 2 weeks ago, I mean, it's night and day. Like the space is moving incredibly quickly.
I've been testing Hero out, but I mostly just use my full node with coin control features and just watch which ones I've inscribed on and stuff. So
yeah, it's kind of nice. Like once you get
I
into
love
the
it.
groove
Love
of doing
it.
that, yeah, it's very, very nice. And it almost like you hear computer nerds say this all the time and no one ever believes them, but it really is true. Once you like get comfortable using command line tools, using command line tools is faster and easier than using like a beautiful, pretty UX. Like it just is. Like once you know what you're doing. Um, so like I think it's dope, dude. I have personally sort of like been through the process of like onboarding nodes with like probably well over 100 people that had never touched command line before. Like they literally had they had no idea like When you said, okay, open terminal, they're like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And those people, like, they hammered through the process, they learned the thing, and now, like, most of them are like they're circling back 4 or 5 weeks later, and they're like, damn, I am so glad I set this up. Like, it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of very cool stuff you can do with it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to touch up on something you mentioned a minute ago. It was regarding sat padding. So I think one of the features or things that we were trying to look more into in depth was um, is is it possible for there to be like a reveal kind of event for an ordinal? So let's say there's one image in front of the other. Um, do you see that being something that will be become a thing? And also, if you can elaborate just on what sat padding is.
Sure. Yeah. So when I'm saying padding, I mean that, like, right now when you do Ord Wallet Inscribe from the Ord software, you give it a file name, and then it picks up one of your cardinal UTXOs, and it uses that to create the inscription, right? And the output of that process is a 10,000 sat UTXO. Now, only one of those sats has the inscription on it. The first sat in the output is the inscribed sat. However, you've got 9,999 other sats in there with it. And that padding was chosen after, like, quite a lot of thought about this. And there's two different sort of like rationales for it. One of which will weaken over time, and the other of which will be, a perfectly valid rationale for forever. The weakening one is that the ecosystem is just so full of wallets that don't have tools to make this easy on people, that if I sent you an inscription that was like at the dust limit, right? Like, it's 380 sats or 546 sats, depending on address type. You would, in order for you to spend that inscription, like to transfer it to someone else in the future, you would be forced to merge it with another input. And if you don't merge it with the right input in the right order, then you can run into pretty serious problems. Like, the inscription could be sent to the miner's fees, or the inscription might go to the wrong party, like it gets sent to the wrong person. There's just a lot of ways for that to mess up. And so, the Ordinals team was like, okay, well, let's do it in a 10,000 sat UTXO, and that way, like, it has some sats in it to where it won't have to have padding again for at least like 7 or 8 transactions, right? And there are some people, like, a lot of people were like, oh, well, I want to do this collection, but I'm doing 10,000 units and I don't want to have to put 10,000 sats in all the outputs, so I'm going to try and lower it to like closer to the dust limit or whatever. And it's your product, like, by all means, do what you want. I kind of caution against this, though, because, again, like, you're increasing the number of foot guns, right? Like, you're making it more difficult for the people that are buying your product, and more likely that they wind up having a bad time with it, right? And I guess I'd like to throw in there the 10,000 sats in the output. It's not a cost, right? Like, you still own those sats. You're not like paying them to the miners or anything like that. Like, they're yours. They're in your output. It's like capital that's allocated to this inscription, right? So, like, you could tack that in. Like, if you intended to sell them for 1,000,000 sats, just sell them for 1,010,000 sats. You know what I mean? And then that gets compensated. It's taken, that whole thing is like sort of taken care of in that process. But so the other reason for the 10,000 sat padding, and a good reason why it might be that we want to keep it for forever, or at least for a long time, is that it robustly improves privacy in the ecosystem. So and some people care about privacy and some people don't, right? So, and like, we should remember that, like, if somebody else wants to go down to the dust limit, we don't have to like be upset about it or like, be rude to them, but you might want to remind them, like, hey, some people might want to participate in your collection and not want to have to disclose their other outputs, right? Like, I want to be able to send this inscription without picking up other UTXOs I own, because that helps create a more complete graph of like where my assets are and can erode away privacy. Whereas if I can just spend the one UTXO by itself without combining it with anything else, then I can practice address non-reuse. I can have really, really robust privacy. Like, things can go pretty well from there.
Those are some fantastic points.
I want to Go ahead.
Sorry, you were talking about address reuse earlier too, and that's very much how counterparty works. Like a lot of the counterparty artists, you know exactly which address is theirs. Like,
Yeah, sometimes you want that. Like maybe you want a profile page on a collection marketplace that like shows all the inscriptions that you own. And so like having them all in one address would make sense. But that does weaken the privacy, right? Like so it's not that it's evil because it weakens privacy. It's just like food for thought, right? Like you make a privacy trade-off in giving those like profile pages. And maybe it's worth it for some users, maybe it's not worth it for others. One of the really great things about Bitcoin is that it's sort of like it's useful to you in the way that you want to use it. Like if you want to use it for like great privacy tooling, it's pretty damn good at that. If you want to use it for like very auditable, like extraordinarily transparent tooling, it's also very good at that. It's just a matter of how you want to use it. Macintosh did bring up one other thing that I wanted to not leave him hanging on though. This idea of like revealing into a file, right? Yes, you can do this, and it's actually like very interesting. So when you inscribe, there are two transactions. There's a commit and then a reveal. The commit just has like a hash. It's like committing to a message. It's like a hash of the message that you intend to reveal later. And then the reveal transaction actually has the file in it. So you can create the commit transaction and withhold the file. And then you can even do like really interesting things like wrap the file into a PSBT, and then you can sell you can literally be like a mint event on Ethereum, right? Like where somebody goes, I want to buy one of these, and they're actually buying like the very first transaction that creates the inscription, which I think is just very, very cool. You can also so you get into the data on the blockchain is completely arbitrary. It can be anything you want. What determines if it's like quote unquote supported or not is the front end tooling. Like in the Ordinals Explorer, does the Ordinal Explorer know how to like work with and interpret this data? So you can do things like have multiple files inscribed to a single SAT. So you could like update a file, or you could like make a very large file that's like segmented into like multiple inscribing files. Or you could make like a photo album, like there's a lot of different things you could do with that.
Well, that's really great to hear, and I definitely want to maybe pick your brain later, or have Jake pick your brain later because he'll probably understand a lot more than I. But yeah, that's definitely interesting, and we thought it would be a really cool concept, and it's fascinating to know that it's a possibility. So yeah, thank you for that.
I think our concept was a little different though, still to what that was. So we don't have to reveal it yet.
Yeah, I was about to say, are we leaking alpha in here? Like, what's going on? Can we talk about it? But if you're not ready yet, don't do it. Keep your secrets.
Yeah, I guess let me ask this: how close can you stack two inscriptions together?
Literally one transaction after another. You would want there to be a commit transaction. So you do like commit, reveal, right? So, and technically that's back to back. You just have to have the commit in between.
No, I mean within the same UTXO. Like, how close can I get the two Satoshis that have the ordinals on them together into one UTXO?
Oh, you could put them literally sequentially. Like you could have an output that is just 10,000 inscribed sats all in one output, just like one after the other.
Okay, so I can. Okay, I don't want to ask too much more because it might be too revealing.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, at the end of the day, these kinds of like, how to structure outputs, it's all just about leveraging the mapping of ordinals. So ordinals asserts this first in, first out sort of mapping of every single transaction since the Genesis block, and that tells us where each SAT is, like from the time it was mined to current. We have like a graph of like where every single Satoshi is, and you can sort of like leverage this to your advantage to like map your own. Like if you said like, oh, I need 16 sats one after the other in the same output, well, it's really just a matter of creating a transaction that splits all those off and then merges them back together into the output that you need with whatever total sat value you need.
Great, I gotcha. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I don't know if right now is a good time to do a public Q&A if you're okay with that.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Cool. Anyone want to come up and ask a question? I think everyone's shy. It's okay.
Everyone is shy.
Yeah. But if you want to I don't know if you want to talk about any other topics or meta that to kind of keep us a little bit ahead of the game without maybe giving us too much. I mean, we're here for it.
Yeah, so the emerging metas, I think, are going to largely revolve around like interesting games with sat numbers. Um, everybody there's like an interesting, I guess you call it like a social phenomenon where everybody tends to like rush after the same meta. So like Nolish did the old sats thing, and then everybody became a fan of hunting old sats, and then the uncommon patterns thing got released, and now everybody's like on the rare sats game. And the rare stats game will last quite a while, by the way, because they're like, when you talk about actual rare and legendary sats, they are like legitimately rare as shit. And so I can imagine that one having some legs to go on for a while, and probably be considered pretty valuable in the long run. But there's a lot of other interesting games, and if you kind of stop and you look at the information on like a sats page, so like let's go we're just gonna like verbally walk through this, right? Let's go ordinals.com and let's click on the most recent inscription. I've got this kind of like cool looking pixel monkey with a crown. If I click on the sat number underneath the image where it says sat and then it has the number, you'll see like there's all these different like attributes of the sat, right? There's the degree notation, which is like how we actually annotate when the sat was mined. And then there's also like there's the name, right? And so the name in most cases is just kind of like a jargon set of letters, but you can actually find sats that spell out specific words. So like let's see, ANONCLUB is 8 characters. So it would be something like one, and I want to say that would be like 1 in every 10 million sats would spell out the name Anon Club. So you could like make a collection where every single sat in the collection, it had the name Anon Club in it, right? And you would just have to like filter through some sats. It's not really necessarily going to cost you like a tremendous amount. You will pay some in fees as you like hunt them down, but since let's just call it 10 million, right? 10 million sats isn't like an insane number of sats. So you just need to like, if let's say you've got 50 million sats, okay, well, so that's 5 sats with the correct naming in them. I'm going to split those off to the side, and then I'm going to take the remainder of my sats and trade them for other sats, like deposit them to an exchange and then withdraw them, or run them through a coin join or something like that. I'm just going to get different sats for them. And now I should have another like 4 or 5, and then I do it again. And now I should have another 3 or 4, and then I do it again. And now I should have another 2 or 3, right? And you can build up sort of this like collection of the sort of appropriately named sats. And then you've got like this cool new game that you can introduce to the market. And people are gonna be like, wow, that's really cool. And then they'll chase after your meta and they'll try to replicate it too. But you'll always be the G that did it first.
Yeah, that's something that we seem to have had a problem with, is being first with some things, and then a week or two later, you see other people doing it.
I mean, which is okay by all means, right? Like people, they see a concept, they like it. But I think it's just people, I guess, essentially trying to say, hey, we're first. That's like a huge thing right now. We're the first to do it. We're the first to do it. And it's like, not really. And I think I actually messaged you last week post or a week or two ago regarding a couple collections. I was, little art projects on the side, and kind of that issue that I was having with all that. And the one thing you kept telling me is like, provenance, right? And just the importance of that. And it just, that opens up a whole other topic.
Yeah, so like creators are always going to like reach for ways to like add value to their collection, right? And sometimes they might reach for those in like legitimately unique and interesting ways, and sometimes they might just be a little bit
Let's see, did I lose
lazy
you
and just
guys?
no, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you
Check, check.
fine.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, so some like
I think my
sometimes
my phone's kind of glitching out right now.
oh yeah, sorry. So like sometimes creators will reach and do something very cool and interesting and
Well, if
it'll
anyone has
and
any, I don't know if you guys can still hear me, but if anyone has any questions, you know, pertaining specifically to, I think, sat hunting, which is, a huge topic right now. Um, even, I don't know, even basic questions. I mean, I don't think any question's a dumb question. And I know that's kind of funny to say because, we always hear that like when we're in school growing up and everything. And even though you feel like, man, this is actually kind of a dumb question, but if you don't want to ask it, openly, feel free to message me. I'll ask it. I have no fear of looking dumb by any means, but um, definitely would appreciate your guys' thoughts or comments on things.
yo, Macintoshi, can you hear me?
That's what I'm wondering too. Can Macintoshi hear?
Are you able to hear
I
me?
don't
We can
think that.
hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, let me DM him. you
Some respect. People talking out here.
What's up, Satoshi? I saw you pop in a little bit ago. How have you been?
What's up? What's up? Thank God, I've been all right. How you been?
I have been doing pretty wonderful, man. It's been it continues, like 2 weeks ago it was this has been a crazy week. Now it's been a crazy month. We're working on like turning this into a crazy quarter.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I mean, look at the mempools over a gigabyte. I don't know if
It's
mempool
wild.
space even shows higher than that at this point.
I don't think it does. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think
it's
it does.
probably more than that. I'm about to raise the limit on mine to see what it is at. Just curious. I mean, I probably won't have like any of the ones other people are purging because they might not you know repropagate them. I'm still curious
That's going to
what
be
it
that's
really
going to be an
is.
interesting field. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting field of conversation moving forward. Is like, should we update standardness rules? Should we embrace very large mempools? You know,
I don't think we
um,
need to. I think
yeah,
even a 300 megabyte default is enough because if you want a transaction that's going to be confirmed soon, like 300 megabytes is a lot. Like what is it purging at 4 sats per vbyte? That's a lot of space there that you can do 10, 15, whatever. It's 5, 6. You don't have to do. I think it's plenty. Though it's nice if people are aware of it and start raising higher ones just so they have it. So this way, you know, the propagation might be a little bit better because I don't know.
well, it encourages people to bid more appropriately, right? Like
Yeah,
you're disincentivized to throw a bunch of like 2 and 3 sat per vbyte transactions in because the odds of them actually, hanging out in the mempool long enough to ever reach finality is really low. So it's like a
yeah,
way of like sort of booting the market into the right direction. Like, hey guys, it's time to actually pay to secure this network.
yeah. I am so excited seeing the mempool actually like develop some kind of like bid system where, now you can't just put a 1 sat per vbyte and get confirmed eventually because chances are we might never. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we will. Some
Well,
people think we will clear in a few months or whatever. Some people think we might not.
if you run your own node, you have your own local mempool, so like your
Yeah, you can raise it
unconfirmed
and make it
transaction
bigger.
can sit there for as long as you have your node open.
Yes, yeah, it can as well. But let's say there's enough demand for 2 sats per vbyte, right? And by enough demand, I mean by like there's people that will always put tons of inscriptions at 2 sats per vbyte, text files or whatever they want. Like they're always going to do it, right? So you can run into a possible scenario where miners really won't be including lower than that because somebody will always be paying, for 2 sats per
What if
vbyte.
what if the data size though, like maybe one of those 1 Satoshi of vbyte transactions might be able to fit into that node perfect or that block perfectly.
Yeah, you could. I mean, but that's just going to be like, 1 or 2 transactions per block, right? If you're going to say the floor is 2 sats per vbyte, a few 1 sat per vbyte might be there just to fill in the puzzle, right? But you're not going to get that many of them filling in if
Yeah,
there's plenty of 2 sats per vbyte.
if you consider like the smallest possible transaction, like a one input, one output P2TR, as people are using Taproot addresses more, the bids on that type of transaction are going to increase as well. So, like, could this little small transaction fit into the last little leg of this block at 1 sat per vbyte? Yeah, maybe. But the odds of that being the highest bid one input, one output P2TR transaction, like a one input, one output Taproot spend, are pretty low, right? Like, there's almost certainly going to be one guy who's trying to send money to his mom and is willing to pay 10 cents for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm super excited to see this develop because like ever since I like learned about Bitcoin and even more so when I learned about during the block size wars, to me it was like it's an eventuality, like it's inevitable that the blocks are just going to be too expensive for average users to use on the base layer. And I mean, it's not too expensive now, but the fact that there is a mempool and you have a purging system that is going on the default mempools. Like I'm loving this.
Oh yeah,
Didn't
in 30 years, it's almost certainly going to be the case that like an average user might make like 1 or 2 base layer transactions every month or something like that. And in 50, 60 years, it may be that a lot of people never actually make a base layer transaction. They use Lightning or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, Hal Finney spoke about this in 2010, and he said that like I don't remember what he said, but in the future he said that uh, uh, average users like using the base layer is going to be as rare as people using Bitcoin to buy stuff right now. So yeah, people that understand the
base layer
small
in the
size.
future.
Yeah.
Base layer in the future will be governments and stuff, so the average user can track their transactions.
Yeah, settlement layer, right? Like exchanges between each other, banks between each other, governments between each other, and if you have like very very high value transactions, maybe. But yeah, it's going to be only very high value transactions, or if it might be possible if we have something like cross input signature aggregation, where a whole bunch of people can batch together a transaction to do on base layer, and on base layer it will only be like one input, one output because of
Already on Taproot, right? Because Taproot enables us to do stuff like this. I mean, you still
yeah.
scale the size of the transaction up because you have a bunch of inputs coming from different people, but the actual like size of these transactions is so much more efficient than like compare it to a legacy transaction. A Taproot transaction is way more efficient.
Right. I mean, even if you just have the signature for just aggregate the signature because the input and out, like just the input, that's not that much data, right? It's the signature that's more data. So if you can aggregate 100 signatures to just be taking up space of only one, then you're just taking up space of just 100 inputs, which is, I would assume, not as much as 100 signatures.
It's very little. I mean, you're talking about
Right.
so like a P to TR input, I want to say, is like 34 weight units, and the base transaction itself is only 10 weight units. And the input, I'd have to go do the math, but I want to say the input, like each input, if you're not counting the script sig, is like 5 weight units or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, last I heard of cross input signature aggregation, it's like theoretically possible, but like actually implementing it is a little bit too difficult right now. But maybe in the future.
There are people working on some really gangster stuff. Like, I don't know if you might have been in the room when Rendell and I were talking about the kind of coin flip stuff that he's working on, or coin swap stuff that he's working on. There's going to be some like very gangster technology in the next year or so.
No, I wasn't there. What do you mean by coin swaps? You mean like atomic swaps, or now that we have more than one asset on Bitcoin?
No,
Type
this would
swaps?
be doing so like you could think of it in the context of an atomic swap, but it's literally like changing my sats for your sats. But you can
Ah,
do it in ways where it just looks like I sent some sats to a new address. Like it doesn't look like a swap. And so you can really
uh-huh.
deeply reinforce privacy by doing this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there is yeah. There is some privacy models that work on that. There is ones that do that on a I guess like a second type of layer already. But yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard about
we've got coin
privacy things like
joins.
that. But
Yeah,
it's
we've
not a
got
coin
coin
join.
join,
It's
which
not a coin join. It's a coin swap, like you're saying.
yes, right. We've
Coin
also
swap,
seen other
different thing.
coin
Yeah.
swaps. This is like coin swap on crack, basically, the thing that Rendell's working on.
Oh, that's cool. I wonder how you would. Are you swapping like private key? Like I'm wondering how the implementation will work on layer one though.
You use ECDH and key tweaks to create keys that you can only derive by knowing that I'm going to do the coin swap with you, but I can't know what the key you derived is.
Mm-hmm. So something like a BIP47.
In the same ballpark, yeah.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Are you also using some kind of like unspent use seals there? Remember you were talking about that the other
Um,
day.
no, but I do think there is, like you and I have spent a lot of time talking about RGB, right? I
Yeah,
think there's a massive, massive use case for the whole seals concept in general.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's nice because like the Bitcoin space has always been like developing, but it didn't get that much eyes. And like the development kind of been fragmented. Like if you're just working on this area, right, of whatever you're doing, let's just say coin joins. Most people didn't really like specialize in that. So that's just like, different specializations in Bitcoin. But now that you have like other people coming into Bitcoin and they find use cases in all these other, type of protocols and other utilizations, it might be where we are kind of like putting people together, and developers are looking at things together. Oh, there's a whole use case of inscriptions here. What can I provide this community, And other developers might also see, okay, well, I'm doing this, but how can I also provide to this community now? So
I think it's really exciting that developers are like flocking back to Bitcoin. Like people,
yeah,
um, it's always been there's a little bit of a challenge to getting people to develop on Bitcoin just because like it's hard. Like developing products on Bitcoin is it's not so maybe it's not even that it's objectively more difficult. It's just a completely different design idiom. Like you have to think in very, very different terms to like come up with the products that people are interested in if you're building them on Bitcoin. Whereas like if you're in like an EVM environment, you have like a machine that you can just script into, right? Like if you've written Python or JavaScript in your life, like you can probably figure out how to script into an EVM. And so the developer on ramp is like a lot less steep, I guess. But once you figure out how to do these things in Bitcoin, you can actually do, in my opinion, much, much better versions of the same products.
yeah. I think one of like two things that could potentially have been putting people off from developing more interesting stuff on Bitcoin. And one of them is because most Bitcoin users don't really care for that, or like previously, the majority of Bitcoin users just want to hold Bitcoin and like, not necessarily do experimentation, even though early Bitcoiners were very for experimentation. So that's one thing.
I,
And I think, yeah.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your
Oh,
thought.
sorry. The second thing is the incentive model, right? The token model is such a strong incentive that it's harder to build on Bitcoin because on another chain you
Yeah.
could just create a token, and the economic incentive is so much stronger that it's just almost always worth it for them to do that. Where, why would they just stay building on Bitcoin where they could just build on another coin and have a token of their own and print?
Yeah, that's also a conversation very much worth having, I think. So, for
But by the way, now you can have a
the
token on Bitcoin, right?
right, yeah,
Now you
for
can.
the
So
I mean, you could have a token before with Counterparty, before Ethereum even existed. So
right, but it
yeah,
wasn't as widely used, right? You want something that's widely used, widely adopted, well, like a standard that has a user base. Like you don't want to make a token on like, on a colored coin system that nobody cares about necessarily. But if you make a token on something that there is a huge user base, that's more, not that I'm for or against tokens. I'm just saying just generally as a developer, right? I'm not a developer, but I'm just
yeah.
thinking.
Counterparty also like so while there is settlement in the base layer that occurs, the actual like environment, the network that is Counterparty, it's not a complete truth to say that that is on Bitcoin, right? Like there's like a provable foundation for the protocol that's on Bitcoin, but you have like logic that's being executed elsewhere. So
somebody
some
somebody called it a layer 1.5 the other day, and I kind of agree
yeah
with that.
yeah, that's not a bad way to look at it at all. I'm really excited in general about people kind of realizing that Counterparty even exists. Like the original rare Pepes are like that's the OG art NFT, right? Like that is literally what started the entire thing. And there's so many people in the space that have no idea that it even exists. Like they just literally have no concept of it. And there are some cool, interesting projects. One in particular that I'm involved with that are doing some very cool things that are like kind of, let's say, like reinvigorate the Pepe community that I look forward to a lot. So the Satoshi brought up the point of like adoption of new features. It's definitely true that there's like a cohort of Bitcoiners that will just shit on you no matter what, no matter what you innovate with. They see it all as like distractions or like unnecessary complications. And like perhaps in some element, there's a little bit of truth to that. Like maybe Bitcoin would be totally fine if the only thing it ever did was like send sats from person A to person B. However, I don't think it's true that like most Bitcoiners have that mentality. I just think that the ones that are good at aggregating attention on platforms like Twitter are generally that type of person. Like those
The
voices
loudest
get
ones in the
amplified,
room,
right?
right?
Yeah,
The loudest
right.
ones in the room.
But Bitcoin's a
Well,
huge tent. You know, like you can find a little bit of everything from every person if you sort of know the right rooms to hang out in. And
I
then
agree.
on the token thing, this is a really interesting conversation to me because you know, I think that sort of deep down low, in the lowest levels of like analyzing big blockchain protocols, what they do is they align incentives, right? They like mining in proof of work aligns the incentives of miners so that they all want to like contribute to the health of the network, right? Token protocols have this like interesting thing where like a really well done token protocol can align incentives, but almost no token protocols do this because the guy making the token protocol wants to just print free money out of thin air, right? Like that's what the VC that's starting the project doesn't want to align incentives. They want to maximize their own incentives. And so it really puts like a lot of onus on consumers and the market to determine whether or not these sort of poorly aligned incentive token protocols are going to succeed or not. And what we've seen over the last 5 years is that you can make egregiously out of alignment incentive structures in token protocols, and the kids will just eat it the fuck up. They will just buy it left and right. And the market seems to be like sort of unwilling to enforce this idea that like we should want well aligned incentives. And I think that if you go to a long enough time horizon, that is going to destroy itself and like erode itself away because you can't, you know, the problem with not having incentives aligned is that a lot of people wind up coming out on the bad side of that deal. Very few people come out on the really, really good sides of that deal. And you know, like you're gonna gas out the market at some point. They're gonna become unenthusiastic buyers, right? So I think that eventually it course corrects itself. But right now we're definitely like there's maybe a little bit of like an identity crisis going on where like people are really interested in blockchain, but they don't understand the technology stack well enough to like know how to assert their own sort of voice as a buyer in like supporting what blockchain, you know, what the thing. I'm not trying to necessarily say like objectively what it's for and this is the only way that blockchain can exist, but there's like certain unavoidable sort of realities like of what makes blockchain valuable, and the market just has, I don't know, the market's a little bit nascent. They haven't figured out how to assert those things.
I'm just gonna read a couple of my own quotes that I have pinned on my Twitter, but there's Bitcoin and altcoins. If it's not Bitcoin, it's an altcoin. Altcoins are tools to get more Bitcoin. I love the tech of altcoins, but I always come back to Bitcoin. That's me.
I mean, it's just to be honest with you, like look at the markets as a factual statement. You know, you extract value from a shitcoin or an altcoin, and then you bring that value back to benchmarks. You know, whether in I think you can have a definition of benchmarks that is larger than just BTC itself, but BTC is the one that everyone will have in their benchmark category. Like it doesn't matter who you are, you understand that BTC is a benchmark asset in the class, right? Maybe you also consider ETH a benchmark. You know, if you're into ETH and you like the protocol, like the network, then maybe you also include that as a benchmark. A lot of people do. Like the number of people that would include it in their benchmark classification has exploded in the last several years, and not for bad reasons, really, to be honest. I personally think right now ETH's got a pretty bumpy road in front of it, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But Bitcoin, if you want exposure to crypto, then Bitcoin's always going to be sort of like a final destination for value. Like you're going to settle value back to Bitcoin. You might there might be occasions where you limit your exposure to crypto and like you off ramp out to fiat or something, but your net exposure to the net accumulative exposure in the market is always going to be pretty heavily preferential to Bitcoin. Which, if you're looking at the BTC.D chart, the Bitcoin dominance chart right now, that is pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, I would agree that it's not all the Bitcoiners that, feel this way, but there is the loud ones in the room that are like, anything other than Bitcoin is a scam or something like that. There is those people, and there's a pro to that too, because there is a lot of retail that doesn't have like the intellectual capacity to understand, like the other coins, and like, even for example a meme coin, or I don't really have necessarily a problem with a token, right? If I wanted to make a company, whatever, make my own company, and I wanted to create shares in the company through a token, like that's not necessarily a scam, but the users need to know what it is. They need to know that, like, the centralization points. They need to know the trade-offs. They need to know that it doesn't have to necessarily have intrinsic value in the future. All of that is not necessarily easy for everybody to understand. Sure, there's people that understand it, and there's degens that might just want to speculatively gamble, and there's degens that might speculatively gamble with educated guesses and stuff, right? But then there's people that have no idea at all, and they would just buy random stuff because they believe it's going up or something like that. But those Bitcoiners that tell people everything else is a scam, they at least protect possibly those that don't understand or don't have the capacity to actually understand, or don't have the time to understand any of those things, or make speculative educational bets. So there is benefits to that too. Though I think that the original Bitcoin ethos was always to go and experiment and learn about every single tech. It wasn't necessarily to invest in other tech, but it was to learn about it. Why not? It was always like, hey, learn everything, try out all the other coins, and if it's a good thing, we might even add it to Bitcoin. Like that was always originally a good plan.
Yeah, it used to be the vibe that, like, everything's a Bitcoin testnet, and then like you might describe it as like the testnets hit their teenage years and they became really rebellious, and they all started trying to convince everybody that they were better than Bitcoin. Which, like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you like it's impossible for some of their network to become better. Like anything could happen, but it's certainly like I have a lot of respect for, like, let's say Ethereum, right? Like I've worked on a lot of projects in Ethereum, and I think there's a lot of promise in it. But I think that if you have convinced yourself that it is flat out a better network than Bitcoin, then you don't see the larger game. Like you just simply don't. And so I think that there still is a lot of value in that sort of observation. Like everything is a Bitcoin testnet. And sure, like, if you get some shit going and it works out and it is demonstrably better, then perhaps it is worth reviewing for inclusion in Bitcoin. I personally don't think I like that we have two sort of idiomatically different networks. We have like Bitcoin, where everything works on very simple cryptographic primitives, and you don't have like global state and full programmability and stuff like that. I think it's good that you have both those ecosystems. A scriptable machine and a very, very primitive machine. I think that if I had to say which one I think has more legs, like going into the future, I think the primitive machine has more legs. I think like it's going to wind up being more useful in the long run and being challenged. It will undergo a lot less challenges, and perhaps Ethereum goes through the challenges that are like lined up for it over the course of the next 3 or 4 years or whatever. And maybe it comes out of the other side as like a better, stronger network, and maybe that opinion updates. But right now, I would agree. Like everything is a Bitcoin testnet.
Yeah, I like to look at it as Bitcoin is more like the military grade, sound money, hard money. And Ethereum like is kind of like the vibes of it's a company. Like, and it can have its own upgrades all the time. It's a company, like that, kind of like in that sense. you can look at it like, all right, well, every upgrade they did was a beneficial upgrade. Okay, fine, but like it's still in a way to me like, all right, well, the company's in charge of the upgrades, and maybe every upgrade they do is going to be good for the shareholders, which is the Ethereum holders. Like, but it's still more of a company to me than like a sound money that is more military grade like Bitcoin. I like Ethereum too. I've used it for a lot, but one issue that I have is that I feel like people don't understand the trade-offs. They don't really understand the benefits of the small blocks, and they don't understand the benefits of like running your own node and how like economic node participants are the ones in control of the network more than like miners or anything like that, or more than even the developers, right? User activated soft fork wasn't even from Bitcoin Core. It wasn't even from core developers, right? It was just like from, I don't know who it was, but was like a random anon that made that software that everybody ran. So it's not like that in the Ethereum ecosystem. It's more driven from the Ethereum Foundation, where it's like there's good to that too, but people need to understand the trade-offs, and I feel like not a lot of people do understand it. And you know but that's just that's just education, and people will just like Ethereum without understanding it, and that's okay too. But understanding the trade-offs is important to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Trade-offs. Just looking at the current validators period. If people understood the block that they were putting money in, they would not be pouring all their money into validators that share a single, like a common jurisdiction. They wouldn't be giving the US government the level of influence that they have over Ethereum right now. They would be like distributing their delegations out to validators, in a healthier distribution throughout the world, so that the network was not overexposed to a single jurisdiction. And it sucks because if people would sort of get educated on that, then you could see the problem like sort of mitigate itself in advance. But that probably isn't going to happen, at least not in any kind of timely fashion. And so Ethereum's just going to, I feel very high conviction that Ethereum is going to wind up sort of like teaching the users the realities by having to go through, proving that it's capable of being censorship resistant. And that's going to be a really difficult track. Like it's going to be a rough road, but it's
But
objectively better.
even with the censorship resistant, like for example, there's been upgrades that change the way the storage is held in the Ethereum, and like it made certain contracts way more expensive, right? Like there's been upgrades that are like that, and like all right, now those contracts are kind of useless. That you can't really use them because it's too expensive, and they weren't like that pre-upgrade. So it might not be like a strong censorship where like a certain transaction is censored. But like from a protocol level, if the Ethereum Foundation does have control over like future upgrades, they do have like that sense of censorship control, right?
Yeah. So if we rewind the tape and go back to history, there's like several moments where like maybe we would have chosen different paths for Ethereum if it were not sort of the de facto thing to just say like, oh, Vitalik supports this one, we're going to run it. But I mean, there are also cases where like things that Vitalik supported did not get adopted. So I don't know, like there's conversation space for that. You definitely, like when you look at it, you are very much inclined to say that TEF runs the show. If for no other reason than people just sort of like accept TEF's direction and guidance.
And it's not to say that any of that is bad. Like maybe those upgrades are needed and like
Right.
they're critical for Ethereum. Like I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like there is a centralized base that kind of controls the upgrades. And even if they're all good upgrades, like monetary policy has been changed a lot of times. Yeah, you can say, well, the monetary policy has always been where it decreases. So yeah, that's good for the holders. All right, but the fact that the monetary policy has changed so many times is already, maybe not necessarily something that people understand well, right? They think, all right, well, this is what the rules are, but the rules have been changed many times, and they probably will be changed in the future, right? Do you have a say on those rules? Most likely not. You can say, all right, well, all the users might just fork off if they don't like the rules, but that's not the current ecosystem. The current ecosystem just kind of follows what the upgrades are. They don't necessarily fork off. But you can also say, well, all the rules have been all beneficial for everybody. That's why they follow them. So it's like there's trade-offs, and I think the trade-offs are important to be talked about so people do understand them.
Completely agree. I think that the more conversation takes place around that, the more opportunity that consumers have to be educated on, the products that they're investing in. Fundamentally understanding products that you invest in is good, right?
Yep, for sure. We've been talking a lot. Anybody have questions? Any other topics we could talk about? I might actually have to run in a little bit. I'm okay for now, but if I do drop out, it's because I had to go.
Hi guys, I had one question. I don't know if it's appropriate, but maybe I can go with it.
Go for it. What you got?
Could you give a brief explanation of what parent-child inscription, how do they work, and like, is that something's notable?
So hopefully, I think the timetable for this is to be shipped like sometime by the end of next week, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I need to play a little bit of catch up on where Ordinally is at on that project. But the way the proposed implementation is to have you create a parent inscription, and then you use that parent inscription as an input when you create further child inscriptions. And so when you look at the Genesis transaction, like when the child was born, you'll see the parent transaction like passing through, sort of like swooping into the input, or through the transaction rather. And that will create like observable on-chain proof of provenance, right? And it does a lot of other very interesting things. Like if you think about it, so if let's say I make a collection with like I have a parent inscription that I own, and then I make 1,000 children inscriptions, and I, sell those 1,000 children inscriptions. Well, each one of those can be a parent to its own collection. So like one of the things we saw early in the NFT industry was like the punks, like a lot of the individual punks went on to like become their own sort of like sub communities and have their own sub collections of NFTs. And so you can actually sort of like build that into the protocol, which I think is pretty neat.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, just a quick word about myself. I'm very much into like crypto art, and I spend my time on like generative, and I think like that's so cool to like.
I can't quite hear you. You're really muffled.
I was wondering the same thing. I could not hear anything. It's very, very low and static even.
Can you hear?
Yes, much better, much better.
Yeah, that is much better.
Yeah, basically I'm in crypto art, and I think that the narrative about like inscribing on else enables like things like giving back to philanthropy or making like raising a shit ton of money to help serve better purposes. So yeah, I'm basically like in crypto art, and I'm super excited about the narrative coming for like inscribing like on rare sats like generative artworks. I think it's a future, so we'll see where we go together. I'll try to bring like of my knowledge.
I look forward to a lot of these types of things, right? Like, I see a lot of interest from, especially like the fine arts community, on how they can integrate products with the ordinals market and how they can use that as, a funding service for any number of initiatives. And I think it's great that people are thinking in those terms, and I hope they explore it.
And to go beyond that, there on generative, like there's an AI related to crypto art that is being built. You might want to check it out. It's called Perceptrons. It's a bit difficult to access it, but I will do my best. If you want to check it out, like there's a white paper has been released. Like it's based on a neural network that is born, grows, and then dies. And then they want to use it for like visual recognition and stuff like that. So it will be like a fully decentralized artistic AI. I'll give you more information about this when I get more.
Definitely look forward to hearing about it. Share as it comes, for sure.
You've been pretty busy this week with ordinals. Like, Just coding and stuff, or?
Oh, dude, like if anything, yes, I've been like insanely busy, and I still have like the to-do list grows faster than you can clear it, right? Especially when it comes to like cooking up new ideas of like things to do. Like I'm adding 20 things to a notepad a day and clearing maybe 2 off at best, you know. Which to me is good. Like that's a good thing. We've got, you know, I said the next 2 years is going to be really exciting. There's a solid 2 years worth of, even with like a really, really well organized, really efficient team of developers, there's a solid 2 years of shipping ahead of us already. You know, that we have we have the conceptual notion for like what we want to do, and we just have to spec, right? We got to spec and implement.
Hey, Post, I want to ask if there is like a way to speed up a pending transaction. Like
Sure, yeah.
just
So Bitcoin has two separate methods for bumping fees. One is RBF, which is replaced by fee, where you're literally replacing the transaction with a new version of the same transaction, but with a higher fee rate. And then the other is called child pays for parent, CPFP. If you are working from a wallet that currently controls inscriptions, CPFP is a lot more friendly of an approach and full of less foot guns. So I generally kind of guide people in that direction. If if the transaction is just like sending an inscription to someone, then you can almost certainly do a CPFP to like expedite it. And I would be happy to provide a little bit of guidance on how to do that. Depending on what wallet software you use, the actual process is a little bit different. So maybe get with me after the call and give me a rundown on like what software you're using, and I can walk you through it. And I also like I fully intend to publish like some thorough documentation and like guides and walkthroughs. Right now we're sort of expanding the feature set in wallets so aggressively that you're kind of like documenting as you go, right? So I don't know. I want to wait until we're in a little bit more stable of an ecosystem and then get all that delivered. But to circle back, if the transaction that you're wanting to increase the fee rate on is the inscribing transaction itself, there are still options, but like sort of know going into it that it's a lot more difficult. Like it's important for you to set a good priority for the inscription that you want when you do it, because you don't have anywhere near as many options in that format.
yeah, I was talking about the pending inscriptions, and I'm actually using the Hero wallet.
Yep. Yeah, so I was speaking with the Hero guys the other day. One of the features that I think is going to be really important for us to get into wallets across the board, that I would like to see in Hero soon, is the ability to manually set custom fee rates in the Hero wallet. Because like right now it uses the suggested fee rates from mempool, which, you know, like in most cases works fine, but there's definitely like moments where that you can get hung up on that. Yeah, you just get with me after the call, like shoot me a DM or something like that, and we can take a look at what options are and see if we can't figure something out. I'll want to, if you can, send me the like transaction hash of the inscription so I can take a look at it, and I'll know from that sort of like what the actual options are that are going to be helpful.
All right, thank you.
Well, guys, I think I am going to have to wrap it up. I need to get back to banging on the keyboard. I've got some deadlines I need to meet in the next week. But it has been really awesome hanging out with you guys. I hope you have all enjoyed the conversation. And if you have any further questions, you know, like throw them in the Discord here or something. When I have a little bit of downtime, I'll circle back and I'll see what all I can answer. Also, if you get clever with using Discord search, so like Discord search is actually like a pretty powerful tool. It's got a lot of great feature options. So like, for example, you can do like from and then colon, and then you can like filter from like a particular person, or you can do like has and then colon, and then search for like stuff that has a file or an image, or, you know, different types of like attachments in it. if you get clever with Discord search and you go to the order cord, like the official Ordinals Discord, I would be willing to bet that every single question you could possibly come up with has been answered in that Discord. And that's not to say that you shouldn't ask the questions. Like, by all means, you know, everybody's got to go through the learning process. But you can probably answer a lot of your own questions by using the order cord as like a docs repository, basically. We have troubleshot every issue imaginable. We have discussed most of the technical implementations imaginable at this point. Like there's such a wealth of information in that Discord right now.
We want to thank you very much for coming and speaking and giving us this wealth of knowledge. To anybody that's still here, in the announcements, there is a Bitcoin address if you do want to tip Post Capone. With that being said, we did record this and we should be posting it on our YouTube within the next few days.
Wonderful. Thank you guys. Like I said, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and bounce, but I look forward to talking to all